I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes for November 20th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
5-0, motion passes. December 1st, the special meeting, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Abstain. I wasn't there.
4 with 1 abstention. December 4th, 2017, the work session. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. December 4th, 2017, the regular meeting.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0, motion passes. The last one is December 14th, 2017, work session.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Next, we have a showcase and a presentation. I'd like to welcome Dr. Peter Cummings, the superintendent of the Narragansett Schools, Mr. Hertz, the computer science teacher over the high school, and Matt Pudeau, one of the students at the high school. So thank you all for being here. Come on up, Matt. Come on up with them. So thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Cummings.
Thank you. Well, we really appreciate the invitation to come and show a little bit about what's happening at our schools. At our budget meeting earlier in December, we talked a little bit about our career and technical education programs, and so our computer science program is one of those programs. We were proud to bring Chris Hers, who is one of our star teachers and teacher leaders, who's really developed the program over time and done some great work. And also Matt Pito, who is one of our star pupils and really has done some amazing things. So throughout the night, if you get a chance to check out the virtual reality, I think you're really going to see the programs that Matt has developed and some of our other students have developed. So I'll hand it over to Chris. He can tell you a little bit about our program, and then we can answer any questions that you have about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cummins. So this presentation is mostly about virtual reality, but I also wanted to show you some of the really interesting things that are happening right now in the tech world at the high school. So this is our first official year as a career and tech program. And that program is actually offered through the Cisco Academy. And I've been teaching Cisco for well over 10 years. And what this means for the district is that we can bring students in from other schools. So that's a really, really powerful thing. Besides just taking the courses, if students go to CCRI, they'll get college credits for each course. So that's 12 college credits for 4 courses. This past year, we also partnered with URI, and I offer 3 classes, URI classes, and each class is 4 credits. We have the Intro to Computer Science, the AP Computer Science, and Cybersecurity. And those credits are free and transferable anywhere. And also, really, really neat is we partnered with Epic Games, and that allowed us to apply for a grant, and we received a $50,000 grant. So the history of gaming, I started a few years ago with a program called Alice 3, and it was a Java-based 3D animation program, but it was a drag and drop, and it was pretty glitchy. So I was able to convince the school to buy me 1 VR system. And Matt was in the first team of students a year ago. He was the only junior. The seniors are gone now. And we started with a Unity game engine to start with the first game. Since then, because of the partnership with Epic, we were able to purchase 4 Alienware computers with Oculus Rifts, which are the computers that you see in the back, those 2 systems there. Epic uses the Unreal gaming engine to create their games, so we're using a professional package, and that's the package that Matt was showing you his work. So in the beginning, the first thing I did with my students was we created a banana, and we put it on a pedestal, and we made it spin. So that was the very first thing. From there, we just added lots of bananas, and the character is the little white box, and as he moves along, he hits the bananas, they disappear, and he changes colors. And the idea behind that is something called like health or hit points, so that the person can either gain or lose strength.
Is that camera on?
Oop. Sorry,
Red
we're
light's
glitching
on.
out here.
Turn this-
Sorry,
turn the screen
well, I don't
on.
know what's happening.
It's good for now.
Oh, from here we went on to counters and timers, sorry. So this is the next thing we learned in class was, so those objects fall down. As they fall down, the actor hits them, a counter goes off, the timer goes, eventually the game stops. This is the very first world that we created with Unreal, and this is Matt's. It's very dark, you can't see it. We're actually inside of a mountain. There's a room off to the side and a pathway that you can go outside of the mountain. Right now in class, I have a few projects going. There's a group of students that want to create a chessboard that you enter the world and you can play chess. They haven't started with their artwork yet, so this is an example of the way programming looks today. So programming, the old school programming is line by line programming. This is completely different, but behind that is all C++. This is another group. They're creating, again, a multiplayer, and that stands for first-person shooter. And they're just starting to work on their graphics, and they have most of their programming down. This is an amazing student. He's a freshman. He created this World War I plane, and you can see in the background he has some of the materials already created. In the foreground, they're not perfected yet, but you can fly that plane. The only thing is that it's not completely set up for virtual reality yet. This is Matt's newest world that he was demonstrating to you earlier. So this character can actually run, jump, kneel, lay down, run around. And so he also created this world, which is absolutely gigantic. But the end result is he's going to have a treasure hunt so that there'll be clues. You can find an object, and then you can try to find it, and you'll collect them. The counter will go off. And just for closing, I just wanted to let you know that VR is not just for games. So that's how it gets introduced. But I just recently took the students to the MIT Museum, and we all strapped on the computers on our backs. So we were no longer tethered to the computer. So we were inside of a giant room, and inside that room, we were inside another room. And so we were able to meet combatants. So these were enemies to each other who were at war. And these were duplicates of real people. And you got to find out why they were at war with each other. And it was pretty powerful. At open house, I had a post office person tell me all about how they're using it to train their workers to deal with dogs, because that's, I guess, one of the big things that they have a problem with. Again, recently, the Southeastern New England Defense Industry Alliance visited, and the Navy is using VR to train the sailors how to use the new subs. So they're So before they even go out to sea, they know how to use the sub. And then lastly, I just threw this in here, but I purchased a solar system program, and you can actually visit any planet in the solar system. And when you go to the planet, feels like you're there, and a narrator comes on and tells you everything you wanted to know about that planet. So it's just amazing. And there are other programs, like there's one about animal and plant cell functions. So you actually enter the cell, and you can watch the way the cell functions. So there's tremendous application for the future.
And so one of the things I would just add is that, you know, Chris is very modest, but what's happening is that our students are walking away from Narragansett High School with skills that are college level and beyond skills. They're immediately able to go out to industry. When we talked to the defense industry people, they said that between the Cisco program and our virtual reality and those other pieces, that we are covering the bases in terms of the real goals of CTE, which is to really have a well-educated, talented, and dedicated workforce within Rhode Island. And so these programs that Chris is putting together, and students like Matt that are really doing, are really showcasing the investment that the council has had in our school system. And if you look at the kind of the information that I gave to you all, we've been able to start a pipeline from 5th grade all the way through 12th grade, really highlighting what we're doing with computer science and with virtual reality. So we really appreciate your support with this. We really want to be sure that you're able to see some of the outcomes of this as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings, and thank you, Chris. Excellent, excellent.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank Matt.
And thank you, Matt. Amazing. Moving on in the agenda, we have a public hearing in about 5 minutes, so if we could go to the consent agenda, if any members of the council have any items that they would like to pull.
He wants an open forum.
Oh, sorry. I'm just looking at the clock, and I'm wondering, I thought we could get through the consent agenda, Richard, and then try to get to open forum, because if not, we're going to have to do it after the public hearing.
Can
We
I
only have
talk?
3 minutes. We only have 3 minutes to do it. Say it again?
I need to talk about,
Okay, ready? 3 minutes, that's it. You're gonna be the only, go ahead. Your name and where you live, Richard. Richard?
I am restating my concern about the purchase of all the Gilbane property because of, number one, the limits of the bond issue just to the old Belmont building, the obvious problem with the $5.8 million limit of the project, and I think more importantly, the purchase of business property, which was not called for in the bond issue and may jeopardize the tax-exempt status of the bond. I repeat to you, the Finance Committee wants to help on this matter. We are deeply disturbed that we have not been asked. We have members on it that know this law better than I do. As a member of this, I beg you, if you will, to make sure bond counsel clears this road. Because the tax exempt status gets iffy if you are purchasing a commercial property.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? We have about 2 minutes, Stanley. I'm gonna have to, 2 minutes. You can, and then you can set up. Name and address, please.
Set on. Stan in Narragansett. I was just thinking, I'm hoping that the fact that Gilbane gave away the condo and gave you the ownership doesn't really cause you to be bullied into going up there and spending extra money. My suggestion is, we've got $5.8 million, and I would like to see all $5.8 million in a building. That's what I'd like to see, the library building. My idea is, in the senior center, all the kids would go in the cellar, you'd have a library there, and kids are in the cellar, they can go outside.
You have to wrap it up, Stanley.
Then on the first and second floor, you could have movies and lecture. Then on the third and fourth, you could have quiet space.
Thank you,
And
Stanley.
then on the top of the
We'll
fourth
come
floor,
back
you
to
can have a
open
deck.
forum.
And then I said, there's the option of going there and have all the money go into the building is a much better idea than sinking it in land.
Thank you. We'll continue with open forum after the public hearing. It's 8 o'clock, and if you want to come up and set up. Well, they're on their way, right? Mr. Manny, they're on their way, right? So we're assured we're going to at least get her set up. I'll open it and we'll wait.
Dan, the IT manager, is on his way.
How
He should
far
be
away
here-
is he?
Well, told me 20 minutes ago, he'd be 20 minutes, so he's imminent. He should be here any minute.
Okay, so yeah, she can set up, we can wait, and we might as well take a little more open comment then, until he gets here. Is everybody?
Whatever your
feel good about
pleasure
that?
is.
Okay, so the stenographer can come forward and set up, and we'll take anybody else for open forum that wishes to speak. Karen? Sorry, without the cameraman, we don't want to say too much or go too far into the meeting.
First of all, I'd
Name
like
and
to...
address, please.
Karen Chepshelowitz, Wanda Street. When my family moved here in 1987, the technology was like in the black ages. And I think we really do have Chris Hertz to thank for bringing us forward by leaps and bounds. And that should really be recognized, because when we moved here, the teachers did not know how to use, for the most part, especially the special ed teachers, were not familiar with technology. And it was really behind a lot of the country in education. And Josh was one of Chris's first students, and he's now working for Google. He has a wonderful job. He's building air clouds. Don't ask me what air clouds are. But it's been a long time in coming. And I just wish the town would listen to the library board, who's been working very hard on moving forward this library. And I hate to see certain people push roadblocks in our way, because we really want the library to become a reality, a virtual reality, and they could be doing things with technology that would help a lot of the adults. And I find it very distressing that people don't support the community, especially if they're on the town council, and they don't support the community of the library. And I think it's very sad. And you get people up here that don't want to spend a penny on the community, be it the schools, be it the library, be it the senior center. And it gets really wearing to keep having to fight over these same issues time and time again. The council members may change, but the issues don't seem to be moving along at a great pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else wishing to speak in open forum? Okay, so seeing no hands in the audience, you want to move to the consent agenda? We could do that, at least vote on that. Anybody have an item that they'd like to pull from the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to pull number 5.
You'd like to pull number 5. Anybody else? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the elimination of 5?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those, any discussion?
Yeah, Mike, why?
Well, we have to vote on the other items first. Any other discussion on the other items? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, motion passes. Number 5, a motion to approve the ADA alterations of the front entrance of the Maury Luchins Memorial Library to be completed by Abcor Restoration Company, Inc., and not to exceed the amount of $6,562. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second? Second. Discussion? Mike?
Yeah, I just have a question. This pertains to the same thing that we've been talking about. So is this on a contract that's existing? Is this a contract that, I just want to make sure I understand?
Yes, this is
the
an
movement-
existing general service contract that I've been on, and this is work that will be done on a town facility.
So this is a contract that was in place. This isn't the contract that was expired?
That's correct. This is a contract, it's a general service contract. The one we spoke about is a historical restoration contract. That's
Okay,
going back
got it.
out to
Okay,
bid.
that's it. That's it. The only question I
Any
have.
other questions? All those in favor of motion number 5? Anybody from the public on item 5? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Let's see, so I think that's all we can really do because we have Fort Greene, and I think that's it. I think we have to wait at this point because the next part of the agenda is pretty complicated. Historic districts, Fort Greene. I don't think we can get any other business done until the cameraman's here, so we'll take a few-minute break, and
Did that kid leave? Maybe he can.
I asked him, he didn't know how to
We're
run
having
it.
a mat there.
He wasn't able to do
Yeah,
it.
that's
So
ancient
we're
technology.
waiting for the camera person to come. He should be here in 5 minutes. So we're just going to have to hold.
You want to do new business? Can't do new business?
I can't, the other issues are going to
Yeah.
be important for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
public to
yeah.
see too, so. We'll just wait. And matter of fact, you could go in the back and try those incredible virtual games. I think it would be, anybody that hasn't had an opportunity, I think you should take a few minutes. Even the reporters, I think you would love that. Take a, huh?
Smoke 'em if you got 'em. I don't even know if that thing's on.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to, yeah, you think you can? Okay, okay, until Dan comes, that would be great. We have a volunteer that's gonna move the camera until they come, so I wanna thank you, Phil. We're gonna get started. He thinks he can do it until he gets here. Yeah. All right, Pat. Okay, so I'm going to need a motion to open the public hearing that's related to the text and mapping of Section 5 in the Code of Ordinances in the town of Narragansett entitled zoning and for the purpose of expanding the historic district zones. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, motion passes. Thank you, Mike and Keith. Thank you to the stenographer for being here. And we are now live so that the public, everybody at home can see as well, so I'm happy about that and sorry for the delay. But it was critically important that we had everybody, this is an important issue in the town, the expanding district, so we want to make sure it's televised and people are watching.
I'm going to give you just a brief update, a brief introduction, and Keith will go over the map revisions that we have, that I, along with the Historic District Commission, have worked on, and my staff, Bruce Lofgren from our staff, has done a lot of the legwork. So just to refresh everyone's memory, I would like to recount that you've held 3 public hearings, one on October 2nd, then October 16th, and then November 6th. At each of those hearings, you reviewed 2 separate historic districts, and as you recall, there were 3 that were new that are proposed and 3 that are existing that are proposed for expansion. At the end of the November 6th meeting, we were directed to go back, revisit all 6 of the historic districts at that time, and reconsider the perimeter boundaries and which properties would be in and which properties would be out. I can tell you that shortly after that, staff held a meeting with Mr. Lescarbo. It took us about 3.5 hours to literally look at every single map, go block by block, look at individual properties, and consider where there could be some changes made. One of the things we did as we were talking this through was to try to figure out, or to put into words what we and the commission had already been doing, which is
determining and putting into place the important factors that help us decide on what should or shouldn't be in. We focused on areas of the highest concentration of older buildings. We also noted the area's significance, if a general area had a great deal of significance itself, and also those areas with high visibility. And from that was a meeting we held the day after Thanksgiving. We drafted up a full set of revisions. In December, on December 11th, the commission held a special meeting to go over all of those changes. And the commission members did essentially the same, undertake the same task that we did, going through each map one by one. And in the end, we actually had expanded our criteria from three elements to 5. The 3 I just mentioned: high concentrations, areas with highest visibility, areas of greatest significance. We also noted whether or not an individual property was already on the National Register of Historic Places, and we also noted if something was in a key location, just a high visibility location. There's a little bit of overlap from all those 5 things, but those 5 things were applied during the December 11 meeting, and it resulted in the 6 plans, the 6 maps that we're going to show you tonight. So with that as an introduction and a lead-in, I'll turn it over to Keith.
Good evening, council members, citizens. So, as Mike explained, initially we took a traditional approach to designing the maps. And similar to other zoning and districting practices, which basically assign areas, you wouldn't have neighborhoods with several properties being commercial and several properties being residential next to each other. So zoning and districting is usually done in block areas. Okay, we wouldn't have a Dunkin' Donuts between 2 houses in a residential area, things of that nature. So that was our first approach, to do it traditionally, in that we would designate historic district blocks or areas. So as we came with the public hearings, we realized that there was some concern with not only individual properties, but the concentration of historic properties in those blocks. So as Mike explained, we took a new approach in that we looked at it from a density and a visual aspect of how easily the houses were viewed from main thoroughfares and such. So after doing that, we eliminated about 100 properties from the proposed districts. And if we could start with, okay, all right, Ocean Road.
Keith, can you just tell us, I know that we talked about the 100 properties.
Yeah.
They were eliminated. That process, those properties got eliminated because you went back to, after all the public hearings, you went back to the commission, you reinvented the maps. Did people at that point that own the property come to those meetings when you eliminated the properties?
Yes, yeah, we did have several of the council that were hired by some of the property owners. We had the people from, a representative from the people from Brown Street off Boston Neck Road in the Dunes District. And as a result, all of those properties were eliminated. So again, I think the Narragansett Historic District Commission has been unique in many ways compared to other historic districts throughout the state. Well, not only with this approach where we're kind of putting wedges and donut holes in our blocks, but we have a 100% approval rating. That doesn't exist in other communities, but it does guide the applicant with a negotiated atmosphere that helps guide them through a successful end. Also, with the tax credit, we pay for 20% of the project that they're doing, up to $50,000. So that exists nowhere else in the state of Rhode Island. We've been contacted by half a dozen other communities looking for consultation, including Providence, Newport, East Greenwich, Coventry, North Kingstown, South Kingstown. This is right in the lap of something very desirable for our community, taking a very assistive approach to securing or at least guiding less than 3% of our resources. Obviously, we have many more historic resources in our community, but we're only focused on, again, these highest densities and the most visible properties. So if we start with Ocean Road, you can see the red areas are the areas that were eliminated from the proposal. Okay, so on the south end, we eliminated these properties. We eliminated.
Keith, when you go through each district, can you just get to the core of how you eliminated 25 properties in Ocean Road?
Yes, we eliminated 25 properties out of the 106 proposed. That gets us down to 81 properties that are now included, and that gives us a 80% density.
Okay.
So high density. We've also eliminated, as I mentioned, on the south end, the bulk of the, and on the north end, the bulk of the properties here, we had some concerns in that area there. There were some non-contributing properties, newer properties. So those were eliminated, and that was, the end result was we went from 106 properties to 81, with 65 of those 81 are contributing. So 80% of those properties are historic and older than 1965.
So again, I'm just trying to get at the process. So you eliminated 25. The people that were of those 25 properties, if they were there, they knew they were eliminated. If they weren't, how would they know today that they're eliminated from the parcel?
Well, no, on the north end, the legal representatives were actually at our meeting.
Right, but we didn't, other than if I didn't attend that meeting and I lived in that area in
Right.
Ocean Road, would I know today that I was out of the district?
Well, you'd know because we eliminated 100 properties. There were only 26 people that came forward wishing to opt out. So we've eliminated not only those 26, in addition, we've eliminated 100 total of non-contributing, newer homes.
Okay.
This ups our densities. That was one of the concerns of our densities. So,
Because that was a high concern.
so moving on to the Earl's Court.
And that was 37 you
Yeah,
eliminated,
yeah,
right?
and you know, this was one of our lower concentration districts, and, you know, it was primarily brought in as a district because of the historical significance of the area, okay, the greens and some of the property around there, not necessarily the structures, but the land site itself. So what we've done is, as you can see, we've eliminated the red, okay? So we've eliminated in Earl's Court, from 72 properties, we've eliminated 37. We're down to 35.
Yeah.
This ups our concentration to 54%, and we didn't want to sacrifice the two on the bottom there, the Druid's Dream, and then the town-owned property across the street as a historic site. So we just broke that. We're calling that Earl's Court North and South, and so we've eliminated a lot of the non-contributing structures, and we've gone from 72 properties to 35 in that
That's
district.
Boone Street up there, though. Are you on
Yeah.
Earl's, we were on Earl's Court, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mike's too quick for us.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to get them straight. So
Yeah.
we started with Ocean and now on Earl's Court,
Yeah,
right?
you know, and intentionally, because I think Ocean Road and Earl's Court were probably the most questioned areas.
They
so,
were.
Yeah, yeah. So as you can see, we cut Earl's Court right in half.
Okay,
There's less than half of the proposed, and so it's now a high concentration, and it's also, you know, very visible area coming down the main drag.
to your point, those were the biggest, we got a lot from the public on those
Right.
two, so.
Yeah, so I
20
think mission accomplished on that.
Yeah, so 25 for motion and 37 eliminated from Earl's Court. Okay, Boone Street we're on now?
We don't want to save too many properties, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So, did we already go by Earl's Court? I mean, did we, I
It's-
saw, I mean, is this it?
You
right?
can bring it back.
We can go right back.
Well, no,
to
I
it.
just want to go back to a comment you made
Yeah.
about non-contributing properties. So you're talking about the structure
Right.
as it exists now.
Right.
So somebody comes into that district and decides to knock it down and build something else.
Well, that.
What protects the district from
That-
some crazy?
Yeah, no, besides these districts, or whatever's not in these districts, the other 97.1% of the town, you're correct, it's completely subject to demolition, whatever someone wants to do.
Yeah,
to
so
it.
I mean, I'm looking at the map of, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not picking out any individual properties, but
Yeah.
I see that you selected to remove some on the north side of Earl's Court,
Right.
and then a couple on the south side, leaving a couple others. And to me, if a historic district is a district, it's a line around a certain geography. So if you're going to be all in, you're all in. So these red boxes
Are
in
out.
between the Druid's Dream and Earl's Court,
They're out.
they're out.
Right.
So if somebody knocks one down and puts up some crazy structure,
They're out.
Well, that's why
that's
we-
not a district, right? That's
Right, well-
like lots on a map, and then there's
I-
more
I-
lots on a map.
I agree, but unfortunately, the citizens, and I think, spoke up, and they were concerned that we had a lot of new properties within that district. So non-contributing are 1965 and newer. And so in an effort to get higher concentrations to appease those that were critical of our districts, we've eliminated those. And you're absolutely right. The traditional approach is to get a whole area, because anything can happen in there that can adversely affect those historic houses around that. But at the same time, we don't want to jeopardize our little 2.9%,
That we want to get.
but going after some new houses that might
Yeah, no, I just,
add
it's just,
distaste.
yeah, it's a comment.
to the
I mean,
population.
I'm hugely supportive.
It's
I
a
just-
compromise. It's basically the result of a compromise, Mike.
I just had a quick question. These people in the red area were able to opt out, correct?
Well, no, we eliminated
Based on the
over
criteria.
100 properties.
Right.
There were only 26 people that were more concerned with their own self-interest than the community at large. So we've actually not only taken the opt-outs out, but we've eliminated a lot of non-contributing properties
Right.
to
Right.
address the concern
It'll
of
be
the
more
lower
concentrated.
concentration.
Right.
Especially Earl's Court.
Right.
That was a low concentration, again, because we were going for the historic site, the land, and not necessarily the structures of that area. So that had a low density as far as historic structures. So by eliminating these non-contributing structures, we raise our densities.
Right. So if this is approved, if all districts, historic districts are approved tonight, there's
Right.
no mechanism to opt out?
Pardon me?
There's no mechanism to opt out if you, like, say if you just bought a house that's in the district,
Right.
in Earl's Court.
Well, you guys dictate. I mean, so anyone in the future can come forward and not only petition, opt out, have
Wanna be
you
a
put
part
them
of.
out, but our goal in the future now, we don't foresee coming before the council again with districts again. So going forward, we would be looking to have what we call one-offs, like the Sunset Farm, where one property at a time would be admitted to the district.
Right. Well, I guess my question is that, say if somebody, we pass this district,
Right.
okay? Next week, some guy comes in, buys a house, doesn't know he's in a district, or if he does, and then he decides to opt out.
He could petition.
Is there a
the-
mechanism in
Yeah,
place
he
for
could
him?
petition the council, and, council would have the authority to
Right, okay.
obviously make that ruling.
All right. Very good.
Thanks, Keith. Central
So,
Street.
next, Boone Street,
On ours, it's Central,
right.
number 3.
So now,
I just want to keep with it.
yeah, so
12 eliminations on.
yeah, so we're on Boone Street now, right?
Well, we're going to go through the maps, and then we'll take questions from the public.
Sure.
We're in the He's doing a presentation. I'll take comment from the public at the time, when you're
Thank-
given the time. Thank you.
thank
Can
you.
we did Ocean, we're on Earls, and now on our paper it says Central.
Yeah, let's go to Central.
Okay.
So on Central, we eliminated 12 properties from the proposed, from 133 down to 121. This gives us a 76% concentration. This is actually probably one of our most successful over the last 5 years. This Pier District area is just, the guidance that we've provided in these areas has, on Central Street and in that pier area, has really helped the area quite a bit. It's pretty obvious the effect that the districting has had on that. I mean, in general, historic districts are really nice places to live, but I think this is a classic example. So there was one property that was, a couple of properties you see on the outskirts that they were eliminated. And this was fortunate that they were on the end, so, because, you know, like Mike says, it's kind of odd to have properties in the middle eliminated, so that it lent itself well to eliminating those properties.
And that was a total of 12, correct, for Central?
Right, yep. Yeah, we eliminated quite a few, mostly due to, you know, non-contributing properties were the highest ones we've eliminated. So the next, go to Boone.
Yeah.
Yep.
11 were eliminated?
Yeah, 11 were eliminated out of the 101, takes it down to 90. This is 73%, 1950 and prior structures. The odd part here is we kind of focused on the main thoroughfares, so you kind of see a donut hole in the center there, but essentially working on the main roads and the visibility from the main thoroughfares was our focus there.
Keith, can you explain that, though? So you have this middle piece, and what does that really mean? Because it's in the middle, it's eliminated right in the middle.
Yeah, there's a few non-contributing there, and again, it's kind of in the center and not visible from the main roads. One of them is the Continental Arms, which is, you know, just a brick apartment house, really of no architectural significance. So, and by eliminating them, you know, we get our percentages up to 73%. So that was the rationale there. Yeah. Next is the dunes. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me the properties, the last block up on the upper left-hand corner?
Yeah.
What that is and who owns that?
Owner there is Jim Durkin, and again, it's a one-dimensional.
So he owns all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots, or 5, whatever?
No, just one.
Oh, just that big?
They're
that
all
big
different
area?
owners, yeah, yep. Yep, and again, to get the percentages up, and because those non-contributors were on the end of the district, it lent itself well to you know, have.
So what's the significance, you keep saying, to get the percentages up? I understand the district. So what is the significance of having a higher percentage or a lower percentage?
Well, you know, you want your historic districts to be historic. So by having a lot of historic properties concentrated, it creates a district that is, you know, healthy and.
So is that just for the,
those resources.
is that just for you guys to say this district is a high percentage of historic? I mean, it's great that there's a lot of historic properties. I just don't know what the significance of, to keep saying the.
Sure.
As I said at the outset, Councilman, the group and I worked with these 5 criteria that were kind of evolved. They evolved through the give and take, the talking process, the discussion, the debate. There was a lot of debate. And we realized we had to articulate what are we applying here? And when we got down to those 5 criteria, we took kind of a fresh look. And it lent itself to saying, okay, this area here, this little subsection like that corner up in the northwest there, isn't really connected to the rest of it because it's kind of bleeding away from the Boone Street, main thoroughfare, and it's bleeding away from Rodman Street main thoroughfare and Congdon Street main thoroughfare, which seem to be the anchors there. The thing in the middle was, that Continental Arms. It's an apartment complex built in the late 20th century, and a couple of brand-new houses built on vacant lots or recently demolished lots. And so we said, why don't we just group all of these things in the middle and just pull them right out, because they're not contributing to the character. So those 5 criteria, what we apply.
I like to understand your decision-making
Sure.
process, so I can articulate that if people ask me, that's all.
And so next is Narragansett Avenue. Yeah, if we go in order, Mike, yep, thank you. So, so this here, we had no changes here. There are 100 properties, 82% are historic. In addition to that, I think if we drive down Narragansett Ave, we notice that a lot of properties need work. It's really on the cusp of renovation or demolition or some type of improvement. And so I think this area here is probably most important to have some guidance, again, with that track record of 100% approval rating with cooperative guidance along with 20% funding, I think would really be beneficial that this area would be developed with a traditional approach rather than a one-dimensional contemporary approach. So yeah, we have 82% in this district of a high concentration. Next is the Dunes area.
How'd the ice plant maintain its criteria to be in that district? I'm just curious.
Well, they actually came in and requested to be in the district. That's a family business there that's been passed down. Very historically significant. They cut ice from the pond, nearby pond there originally, and packed in sawdust in the basement. So there's a rich history there. I think even along with the gas station, what's unique about those properties is it's not just the architecture, but the heritage of the way of life or the industry there. And, there's very few places. I think there's only a couple of ice houses left in the state. And we all know how few gas stations there are where you can pull up and some guy with a rag in his back pocket checks your oil and, there's that kind of thing. So it's kind of something that is going by the wayside, and it kind of gives a glimpse into the past to see these industries and survive, as well as the structures. So in the Dunes area,
15 eliminations on that
I'm sorry?
Yeah, there were a lot of complaints from that.
Yeah, there were 15 that were eliminated.
Yeah, so on the
like that
Dunes,
lady.
on the Dunes area, we originally had 25 properties, and we've eliminated 15 of the 25. So we're down to 10 properties. If you remember on, I think it was Woodward Street, Mike, is it Woodward? Yeah. Or Brown or Woodward? Brown? Yeah, so we eliminated 15 of the properties and around that. We were going to eliminate that side, but Mr. Palmietti came in and was really looking forward to the 20% tax credit, so he insisted on being left in the district. So we couldn't refuse him. So we kept him in, and it's nice because it does bookend that entrance, bookend that entrance to Boston Neck roadside there. So we actually, with going down to 10 properties out of the 25, we now are at 80% concentration there of all enthusiastic members, realizing the advantages of being in a historic district. So that's all our districts. So essentially we have, as I mentioned, I think it's a great idea. Many towns would be thrilled to have an organization of this type. This is many years in the making. I'm just the current mouthpiece for this movement. But with 100% approval rating to date in the last 6 years, and the 20% funding, we have a house doctor. We call it the NHDC HDC, the Narragansett Historic District House Doctor Consultant Program. We make house visits. We can tell you what's wrong with your property or problems that you may have. We help homeowners townwide solve problems or plan projects. We have a pre-application process which helps applicants with larger projects, including their design, their order of operations, cost engineering, etc. We have a local newspaper tip of the month that we do every month. We offer 20% tax credit up to $50,000 that we pay for your project. We streamline the process with a 24-hour approval time for complete in-kind exterior replacement. It doesn't exist throughout the state, so it's a very user-friendly process with a bit of guidance that essentially just helps people preserve architectural resources throughout the town. Just for 2.9% of the town, and the other 7% we can have at it,
So Keith, I just want to thank you and the Historic Commission for the public hearings that you held at the commission level, and then we had a number of public hearings, and we heard from many people in all the districts and their concerns. And I'm glad that you went back and you did the revisions and eliminated 100 properties due to the concerns, because obviously we adopted historic districts in 2012, was that when it got adopted originally?
A pilot program, correct.
Yeah, and to expand it's great, but we obviously want to balance that, right? Because we always hear the property rights thing, and we really want to make sure that we preserve the history and we listen to the people at the same time and the character of the town. So I think that the work that the modified maps, and from what I see from the people that came forward, the attorneys that came forward, I see you cleared up a lot of the concerns, and that was the thing. We didn't want to get held up and approve something and then end up in court and everything be a stay. So I appreciate your flexibility, because at the end game is that we get some of the historic districts that we can expand. Maybe it's not as wide as we want, but we don't want to get caught up in not doing anything. So I think working with the residents and working with the commission has been solved a lot, and from the hearings we had. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but from what I went through in the properties, I think we addressed almost everybody. I think maybe one or two might be out there, but all 26 people that came forward, I think, had been addressed.
Right. As I mentioned, most of them are non-contributing properties that we've eliminated, but there were a few precious resources that did go down. But, we don't want to jeopardize the whole cot for a few properties, and yesteryear we had no protection, so if we can secure these few, I think that's good. If you look throughout the state, historic districts, throughout East Greenwich, Benefit Street, I mean, they're really nice places to live, and it's an exact science. It's not luck, and with the architecture that we have here in Narragansett, we still have some nice places, and I think it would be irresponsible to say, let's forget about 100% and instead of just 97. So I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from the council?
Questions? Any questions?
Any comments? Any concerns?
No, I just have a quick comment. I mean, I think you've done a great job in being receptive and flexible. There are many historic districts that are not. So I really appreciate your flexibility.
I can testify to that. I've worked with them for 40 years as a carpenter, and so being on this side of the fence, I think it was important to recognize and to, we work with people. If someone comes in and they don't have all their plans together, we'll approve their foundation so they can get going. We get them working and get them going, and that's why you didn't see, we've been in operation for 6 years, and you didn't have one person that came up here and complained. To work with us is really to know and like us. So you didn't see one person come up here, not one, zero, come up here and say, oh, I got a bad shake from the commission. Everybody's happy, and because we give them all we got, and it's free, and it's all volunteers, and it's been in the works for years. So It's a great thing for the community.
Thanks. I'm going to take comment from the public if I don't have any.
Also, I just wanted to say that, going forward, we have one person that might come in and say, hey, I'd like to be in the commission, and they can petition the council to become members one at a time. That's what we would do going forward. And obviously, if someone wants to opt out, who's going to, the council obviously has the right to make that decision as well. And, no one can tell you that you don't. Thank you.
Thanks. And before we take comment from the public, Jim, the historic district expansion maps in the back we can keep for the public, so if anybody wants to view them, can they stay? We just want to make sure everybody out there
Yes, of course. they can stay.
understands the
Yes.
expansions, their properties, and I'm going to listen to the public, and I'm going to urge the council to keep the public hearing open, because I want to make sure between now and the next meeting that anybody that has any concerns would have that opportunity to look at the maps, call the manager, call the Historic Commission. So I'm going to hear from the public, but I'm going to ask you to keep the public hearing open, and we can vote on February 5th. So any comments from the public? Stanley, is that a hand up? Yeah, we'll keep it open.
Stanley, can you please raise your right hand, state your name and address?
Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Somehow I didn't get to see these ahead of time. I asked my wife to come in and check, and I just noticed that I've got an older house, which is kind of maybe on the center edge of the on Kingstown Road, and across the street from me is a raised ranch. So we've got a fairly non-historic house right across the street from me. And I understand that I'm kind of in between a couple of historics, but I would like to have it at least voluntary on my part on what I have to do. I really don't want to have to go for loans. I don't have to. I just don't like to be involved in all this. And I'm not so sure that leaving it as it is now, and maintaining it as it is beneficial, and I plan to do that. I'm not going to put any condos up there, and I don't see anyone else doing that on that particular lot. So I would just like to be able to take my house out, 67 King, one house. I didn't realize there's a petition available. Now, if the petition available has to go through you, I guess I'll just do that rather than raise, because I really like the whole idea. I like the whole idea. It's kind of nice to keep them there.
Stanley, what was the address again?
67 Kingstown Road. And that particular house, I'll probably be doing some fix-ups on it, and I'll appreciate what they have to offer, and most likely I'll be doing something like that. And I'd like to do it on a voluntary basis. I just get too nervous having to have someone on me like that and have to do something exactly like this. And I know they're fantastic. I guess at my age, I can't take the guidance as well, maybe. So if I could just come out of it, and I may sell a place, and a new fellow will say, hey, I want to do it, and he'll come back and ask to go in,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Hi, Richard. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Richard, Vangermeersch.
And would you,
I live at 55 Osceola.
would you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to speak for the Narragansett Historical Society. I don't see anyone else here. We are very supportive of what the preservation group has done here. And more importantly, on behalf of myself, I have spent a couple of meetings with the planning board, and they've introduced a new word, connectiveness. And what Narragansett has is a rich area of unconnected things. We just have not tried to connect them together. Now, this is a giant step forward, but it's a step forward. What needs to be done now is some work to connect these districts together and to make Narragansett walkable with a purpose. We don't have enough purposeful walking, which is a new term I made up a few minutes ago. People are here, but they don't know what great things they are. They are here, and they are relatively close together, so that within a day or two, you could really do a great deal of learning about Narragansett. Just give you an example. The planning board tonight was looking at 114 Boone Street, the former Presbyterian church, which is now most charitably called in a state of total disarray or junk. And what I suggested to the gentleman, we have an historical base in Narragansett. It's on the walls of the towers, a relatively small map of Narragansett in 1888, and then one blowing up on the other side. It comes from a very, very spectacular map with legends that I have copied. This is Narragansett in 1888 when it split apart from South Kingstown. So it's a very important historic date, and just by chance perhaps, maybe not, we have a complete map of Narragansett Pier in 1888 with legends. I think there were 60 legends. I found 57 of them. I couldn't find the other 3. But that gives us an opportunity. On Boone Street, for instance, as you're going by what once was a church, and the gentleman plans to basically reconstruct the architecture of the church, we can then have a sign, a church sign saying what this is, what it looked like in 1888, and what it looks like now. We can do the same for the Narragansett Pier train station. Admittedly, we have some of the track there. We had a caboose, but we lost it, unfortunately. But we can have a sign there saying this is an historic spot. And we could go on Boone Street, of course, borders on Central. You've got historic houses there. We could put together a very meaningful series of walks, connected, revolving around the towers, because there it is. That remains the most, was and is the most famous spot in Narragansett, looking at the Coast Guard House, the reading room. We have all these things there, but they're just not connected in people's minds. They're close by enough for a day tour, but we just can't seem to leap into this. Newport certainly leaped into it. They had the advantage of having Doris Duke. If we had Doris Duke in Narragansett in 1947, we would rival Newport for what is here. And we just can't seem to connect this. And this is one way to start to connect this. But it just should be a start. And that is something we've just got to take the next step. And I don't think we're going to find a Doris Duke. Well, we're going to have to find someone who's going to say, This is a great place with a great history. It's walkable, it's doable. We just haven't done it.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else wishing to speak on the expansion of the historic districts?
Russ Astor, 15 Fifth Avenue.
Russ, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
DASTA. I know I've spoken to you a number of times. I don't usually come here, but this I feel very, very adamant about. This is about rights. People moved into this town and bought properties here with a certain expectation of those rights, to be able to do what they want with their properties within the law. The law at the time when you buy it is very simple. What you are actually doing is changing that law, saying what they can or cannot do on their own property. It is unfair, and it shouldn't be allowed. I'm very unhappy with, Keith, I guess his name, with the way that he's come across with these things, because the question you ask about changing zoning and opting out, you can't opt out. I mean, you can try. It's like opting out of taxes. You know, you can try and appeal and find your way out of it, but you're not going to opt out. If you're in this district, you're going to be in this district. Now, as far as my property, it was segmented out of this, which I'm very happy about. The real problem is we've had 3 people talk already, and they're already talking about expansion, which means that my property, which has just been locked out, in another 3 years is going to be locked back in, and I'm going to have to fight this fight over again. 6 years ago, in 2012, I was told I was in a voluntary zone, and it was going to stay that way, and it was never going to change. And now here I am. I've been to, 6 meetings to make sure that something doesn't change in my property that affects me the way I bought it. It's not fair, and it's not necessary. The fact is that this area looks the way it looks because it went that way. Over the last 100 years, the houses that are stayed, and the ones that went. And it looks like it looks because there was no regulation on this. There was nobody saying that they had to have it this way that didn't. People did it because they wanted to. And with most of the properties in this area, they will do it for that same exact reason. These regulations are unnecessary.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Mike?
Hello. Meg Rogers, 68 Earls Court.
Meg, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank our planning director, Keith, and the members of the HDC for their incredibly hard work in producing this and the prior plan. But it is your support that matters here, because that's what will turn our town towards our history rather than away from it. I loved the first plan. I'm not happy with the carve-out, so I just want that to go on the record. I think it's unfortunate that the plan had to be gutted due to the complaints of some folks that don't want to be included. Many towns find that they need to hire high-priced consultants to prepare plans like this. In fact, most of them do. But because of the skill and dedication of our planning department and our HDC, we haven't had to expend those taxpayer dollars, which can be considerable. So I thank them for that as a resident. Having these districts will preserve and protect the distinctive characteristics of homes and places significant in our town's history. You will determine as a council whether, as a town, we choose to maintain and improve our historic buildings and places, and almost just as important, whether we want to encourage new designs that are compatible with historic elements already in place. Now, historic districts can help create and foster tremendous community pride. Think about the pride people take when they walk through Wickford and Bristol and Newport, and imagine what those places would look like if they had not been afforded protection by elected officials. Narragansett desperately, and you've heard the cries, desperately needs stability in our neighborhoods, and historic districts really will help bring about that stability. Certainly, districts cannot prevent all changes from occurring, nor do they prevent all demolition, new construction, nor development. Their purpose is not to halt growth, but to allow for change that respects our history. Now, while it is true that an additional step is needed for some projects, the layer of protection those steps take offer impacts of how our town will look for future generations. And I would like to emphasize, after listening to all of these workshops and public hearings, that zoning alone cannot protect the small amount of what's left of Narragansett's historic character. Once the developers and their lawyers make their money, they walk away, and more often than not, with them goes our history. I see this as a form of identity theft, because they change the character of the town in perpetuity. It's identity theft. Without historic districts, the markets focus on short-term results at the expense of valuing long-term benefits of preservation. Not all, but some landlords in rental markets like ours will alter buildings to maximize net income. Developers will often read the economic tea leaves in favor of teardowns. Earl's Court, where I live, is rapidly becoming a favorite place for student rentals. Druid's Dream, built in 1884, and the Tower House on Earl's Court, built in 1885, are both for sale. If you don't protect them, they could be altered or torn down. The Green in Kintara Green is not the same place, cited by the Rhode Island Preservation Commission for its symmetry, its remarkable continuity of scale and form. That green, an incredible jewel, which was a park-like setting. Any person could walk through it. They were invited in by the people that lived around there, is no longer as McKim, Mead, and White designed it, because the 2012 Town Council did not see the value in it, and they lacked the political will to protect it. And there was one gentleman who lived in one of the Sherry cottages who opposed the protection of Kintara Green. He sold his property and he's moved on. New England is distinct from all other parts of the country, and in no small measure because of how it looks. And that's a result of preserving its remarkable history. No property stands alone. It's part of something bigger. We all belong to this community. And I ask this council, this is your moment. This is your moment to shine a light that here in Narragansett, we value who we were, who we are, and what we choose to become. Some things are bigger than one person and one house, and preserving history for the future generations is one of them.
Thank you, Meg. Anybody else wishing to speak? Bob, go ahead.
Robert Shields, 37 Earl's Court.
Robert, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I would like to say that as a member with the founding of the Historic District Commission, that I've sat through 95% of the meetings. And in the last 2 years, the Historic District Commission has been thinking about expanding its districts. I think I attended at least 14 meetings on just that subject where it was on the agenda. We thought we had a good plan to expand the districts, but the council did not decide to accept that plan. They wanted something else. What else it was not clearly defined. So we went back and we had 3 meetings to try to define and discern what the council wanted. I don't know whether we achieved that goal or not. I noticed that Mr. Moretti kind of questioned that we had eliminated so many properties on Earl's Court. And also, I think we've eliminated the connection between Ocean Road South and Ocean Road North by not including the houses in that space between. I think those are both misguided. I want you to know that I will live with anything that you approve, but I think that it's necessary for you to step back and take a second look at those 2 districts, because I think it would be wrong to really not make them contiguous. So I think that by including the houses on Gibson Road between Druid's Dream and the major part of Earl's Court Historic District, they should be included. And also I think that the houses on the water between more or less the Skeffington property and the Pier Number 5 should be included in the historic districts, even though they're non-contributing, because it's too valuable a tract of land in there to let it go unincorporated into the Ocean Road district. So if any of you care to amend the motion, respectfully, I submit that you can do that and return to the original submitted plans that we gave you several months ago.
So Bob, we got the revisions tonight, and we said we wanted to give people some time to absorb those changes. So we're probably going to amend the motion to close the public hearing and keep it open until the next meeting. So we're listening to the people tonight, just as we've had all along. So we're probably going to do that.
I'm just trying to get some integrity into the process.
Agreed.
Of the districts,
Yeah.
so that they're not separated by uncontributing properties.
Understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Carol?
Carol Stewart, Foster Lane, Narragansett.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I have never attended any of the meetings that dealt with preserving the historic districts. Obviously, you know that my attention is in other areas. However, I can appreciate what you're considering. I appreciate the people who have worked hard on trying to come up with a plan that is satisfying to the majority of people. I just find I find that as a resident, when I have out-of-state or out-of-town people, I always drive them around to see the areas, and they're usually overwhelmed and are thrilled and say how lucky you are, to be in such a lovely town. So I obviously would be in favor of what you're doing. I just think that at times in the presentation, there tended to be some words that sounded elitist. I know it's probably not intentional, and maybe it was just because of my situation and where I live, but non-contributory, I don't know, words like that, I just kind of would sit up and take notice. I know what they meant by it, but I do appreciate what is being presented, and And when Meg referred to her fears of some of these areas being changed, I can certainly sympathize with that, because I would hate to see any of the historic district come to the point of resembling where I currently live. And you all know where I currently live. So thank you for allowing me to speak, but I am in favor of what you're doing for the town.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else wishing to speak?
David R. Shambo, 14 Hollywood Avenue.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
ARCHAMBAULT. I don't live in this part of Narragansett that has any relation to these zones that you guys are putting together. And honestly, I showed up a little late today, so I missed the original presentation. I've only had a brief time to look at it online. But I want to state again that I think imposing rules and regulations on people who have bought here under the impression of being able to do what the town's bylaws say to do, to put them under an extra burden because some people think that because something is old, it's historic, I think is wrong. I'd also like to see, when I had sewers put in my neighborhood, I had to fight for those. And the town, on 3 occasions, sent out a mailing to each and every person that would be affected by that for a poll. Were they in favor of it or not in favor of it? And we've had people come up here that are in favor of it, and they make some nice arguments. And we've had some people come up here that are not in favor of this, who have also made some very poignant points, and there's not a need for this. To do this kind of zoning, as you call it, making these boundaries, my friend was in the list, now he's not. It's unclear if he is still in the voluntary section that he was in
Do you want to say the
before.
address?
I don't know the address, but right here right down the street on Fifth Avenue.
15 Fifth Avenue?
He was at one point in the voluntary and told, that's all it's ever going to be. You'll be in the voluntary, don't worry about it. It's just, nothing else is going to change. And here we are, and it's changed. And because he was here and argued, he's out. And it seems like the properties that are out are just the people who had the guts to stand up here and say their name and say where they live or bring an attorney. What about all those other people who don't like to talk in public, aren't going to make it here, maybe can't make it here? Are they interested in having their property put in this zone? Would they rather not? Are the houses that are old, are they really old? Have they been redone a numerous amount of times over the years and really have no true historic value? Because maybe they were built to look old, great, but they don't meet the standards that are a building that is actually historic. If something is old, it doesn't make it historic. It just means that it's old. If something has happened there, the towers, a lot of stuff has happened there. It has historic value. But an old house that's been kept up enough to live in doesn't necessarily make it historic. And to force these rules on people isn't right. And last time I was here, I made a point that, and again, I don't know, is this even legal? I've seen some things that say this kind of spot zoning is not even legal. I think the easiest thing to do, which would help the historic, instead of forcing historic on someone, let the people know that there's a benefit if you put your property in a historic property. You get those benefits, now it's historic. And if I buy that property the day after they make it historic, I know it, I know the rules I have to abide by. But I buy a house today, and tomorrow you make this rule, it's just not right.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Dennis?
Please state your name and your address.
Dennis Lynch, 22 Central Street.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So this has been a long slog. This has been years in the making of this expansion. And I think I'm hearing, Susan, that there's not going to be a vote tonight, as it was stated on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm trying to, to the last speaker's comments, people that came, spoke, and, they modified the maps. We want to give anybody an opportunity that's going to come forward that might have some concerns about it. I think we're trying to avoid any kind of problematic situation down the road. So we want to see, I know I'll speak for myself, I want to see historic expansion. I have been very supportive of it. But we had hearings and we saw a lot of people with a lot of attorneys with a lot of concerns. So I want to make sure it passes, but I don't want to be held up in a stay where we can't get anything for 5 or 10 years. So it's a compromising position for me. I don't love the spot zoning either, Dennis, but I'd rather take some of the properties to continue to be historic than not at all.
Right.
And that's where I don't know where my colleagues stand, but I'm going to be clear to the record. I support the expansion, but I also see some of the properties that were modified, and I agree with the modifications for all of the reasons presented from the Historic Commission.
Yep. Sure. So I think you have bent over backwards to hear all of the voices, and I know for certain that people who didn't come here sent emails to the council, and to the extent there was an objection, those emails were forwarded to the commission to take into consideration. I know way back when the public hearings were, when the individual district hearings, public presentations were done, everyone received a letter who was affected by it. So I think you've fulfilled your obligation of notice. It's some of the arguments against it feel very much like an argument that must have happened in 2011 when, should we have a historic district? How much damage will it do? How many of the rights will be trampled on? And how many complaints will you get? And maybe back in 2011 you said, well, let's start a pilot. Let's just do a certain small number of houses and see what happens over that amount of time. And you have all of that data and information from the past number of years that I hope you take into consideration. So, I've been to a number of the Historic District Commission meetings as well, and very, very dedicated group of people. And I probably would have banged my head on a wall long before this for all of the iterations and steps they've gone through. So I really think the town has a great resource there, been very productive. I've sat in meetings where I've seen them actually create positive value for the people that are in there, that are petitioning in there, saving them money on different ways of doing different things because of the expertise in the room. So I think the council can be completely comforted that you are not, and I don't think you do think this, that you are, releasing a new heavy-duty regulatory body on a broader population of homes. You're not doing that at all, and you know that. I do have to say it feels a little bit disingenuous to say that all of this historic renovation would have occurred if you didn't have a commission in place. I mean, come on. We've driven the neighborhoods. If you go down Rodman and you see what's been built there in terms of the condominiums, if you go on Cedar Street, there's one home that sticks out like a sore thumb between all the other Victorians because it wasn't in the historic district. We don't have a reputation in town of doing everything by the book. So that argument just doesn't hold water. I don't like to drive over bridges that don't have a lot of really good regulations and structures around them. The thing about waiting is that every week there's a new application that goes into the community development headquarters, potentially with a house that could be in the expanded district. So the Presbyterian church that's in the process of being renovated, which, how can you think of anything much more historic than that? Because the application is already live in the planning board process, even though it would be approved in the new expanded district, it does not have to comply with any of the historic district commission regulations. Hopefully they will, hopefully they'll take it on an advisory basis, but there is a cost from having more and more time go by. So I urge you to support this. I think it's a very healthy compromise, and which you asked for. I don't think it has to be tweaked or weaned in many more directions, and I would urge you to please get to a vote soon to finish this long march that the town's been on.
I agree. Thank you, Dennis, for all the comments. I agree. If you've already spoken, we're going to get ready to close the public hearing, so.
Mark, can you address the one question that Mr. Archibald had about the legality of the spot zoning?
It's something that I would want to research. There is definitely issues with not just spot zoning, but the non-contributing structures. So it's not something I want to answer off the cuff.
At this time, there is a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have anybody that would like to amend that?
So if you're going to read it, I mean, we can amend it to continue it, a motion to continue.
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking for?
I'd like a motion to amend that. I mean, I don't have to read the whole motion.
So a motion to continue the public hearings.
Okay. Any discussion about that?
Yeah, I have a question. So continue it to when?
Let's continue it till February 5th, which is the next meeting.
And then after that, when is there going to, this, so wait, I just want to ask this question publicly. So tonight was to discuss and continue the public hearing on the districts. Then there was a vote that was going to take place, correct?
Right,
Yes.
according to the agenda.
So
right,
so there's a lot to this one page that needs to be modified. And I would ask that if we're going to continue the public hearing, I also want to know when the vote's going to be taken.
So to your point, there are 2 or 3 motions, but if we have an amended motion to continue, they all go away, and then we can, February 5th, we can vote on these amended maps. Tonight is the first night that the council has them. We heard again from the public. So I want to, again, I think we took all the right steps. We want to make sure that people understand the changes, the revisions, because this is the first time that this council has seen the revisions tonight. The commission, you know, we've received them. Now the public has them. They're going to be displayed in the chamber. And I think I could vote on it tonight, but I'm just worried about a few properties that might pop up if somebody didn't have an awareness to the comments tonight. So I think waiting 2 more weeks to vote on the expansions is not going to change drastically, Keith, right? So the amended motion would be that we could keep the public hearing open until the 5th, and then we could vote on the maps, accept them, put them on file, etc.
And I think we've been talking a lot about this for a long time. We'd want to proceed cautiously with expanding a government program because of the very strong private property rights that have been articulated against it. So we have to remember that when we're expanding a government program that's been successful but small. I think another thing to Jill's comment, Bob Shields' comment, Dennis, I think, commented on it, Jill commented, Mike said it. I think we've gone it a little bit wrong by somebody complained and then they got pulled out. The way I had approached this from the beginning was there's 6 areas. And then I wanted to hear what members of the public had to say about the historic nature, my own knowledge of the history of the town, what the different people, what the complaints were in each of those areas, what's the concentration of historic structures there, and what's the recommendation from the Historic District Commission, all going into that. So what I'm going to ask for, because this is how I had kind of been thinking about it, and maybe I just think pulling one property out here and another here, we're falling down the spot zoning road that we don't need to go down. I think I would look at it as I'd like to see 6 areas and voting on each of this, what does the council as a group think about Dunes? What does it think about Boone Street? Because as I've heard all of this, there's certain ones that have, people will not agree with me, that have fallen off and they've kind of gone down, and others have kind of increased as areas that we want to protect and preserve.
Matt,
So I would, that's how I'd like to see it. It's a motion to
Yeah.
continue instead of the expansion, because it's 6 areas.
Right, and to your point, to the pulling out, the Historic Commission had criteria. It wasn't, you used that criteria. Could you please come back to reiterate that, Keith, before we vote on this? People just didn't say like.
But I don't want to get in a big debate. I just think that it went, but it did go that route. I mean, and so I think that I'm just saying that I want to look at the area. I kind of have a ranking in my
And that-
head of the areas.
That's fine.
As opposed to each individual property.
No, that's fine, but
Because that's not a district.
No, that's fine.
Right.
We can
So-
do that. We can vote on each district, but I think it's important that the public here, you did pull some of the properties out, but can you just read that, how those properties got eliminated? Because that's
Correct. So,
important.
to address Matt's point, I think the elimination was more a result of exactly that, finding a criteria. And we didn't just pull anybody that stepped forward. That wasn't the approach. We were looking to, we looked at five criteria, 5 standards. Primary to the public view, okay, so properties that were located on main thoroughfares, because that's really what affects our tourism and what we see daily. Enhancing the concentration of historic properties. I won't say contributing
Yeah,
structures, I don't
go
want to
ahead.
offend anyone.
Number 3.
Key locations, places that were on the National Historic Register, and significant structures, high-quality structures. So as a result of that, that's why we didn't just eliminate 26, because that's really all we had that stepped forward. We eliminated 100, because that's what fell into that criteria. Now, fortunately or coincidentally, those 26 were in that 100. So if it was just whoever stepped up, we would have only stricken 26 from the proposal. We actually took 100 out. And then as far as public support for this, the Independent has been doing a poll throughout the town-wide poll.
Keith, I don't want to interrupt
yeah.
you, but I just wanted to
Right,
define
right,
the 5 criteria standards that the
Right.
commission used in eliminating the
Sure,
property.
yep.
To Matt's point, it wasn't just sporadic and spotting it. You had a criteria that you used.
But the 26 are out, too.
The 26 are out with
That was
more
a big
out.
criteria. Right.
Yep.
But just, that's what I just wanted to, so the public knew that we just didn't randomly, if you showed up, you were out, that there were
Right,
more than 26, there were a total of 100. But to
And if you
Matt's
look at the maps, the areas are solid. You can see, like, if you look at this, for instance, that yellow is a continuous, there's a continuity there of
Yeah.
area. Yep.
So we were in the middle of making a motion to continue, and when we come back, then we can look at each district and vote individually on the district.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we're ready to make the motion for that.
And the poll currently has 70%
Thank you,
in
Keith.
favor.
Thank you. Okay, do I have an amended motion?
It's on, yeah.
It's, all right,
Continued.
continued. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. So we'll continue that for February 5th, hopefully for a vote. Moving on to the new business.
I move I make a motion to move item number 10 to the top of new business.
And I'll second that motion. Do we have,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion 10.
Let's talk turkey.
Motion
chickens.
10. A motion to discuss a proposed ordinance regarding fowls. Do I have a motion? Motion?
So move.
We're done. We're going to close it, right?
We said to continue.
No, it's continued.
Continue, yeah.
Do we have a second? Discussion. I actually put this on, and in looking at the animal ordinances in the town, we have ordinances against horses and swine. We don't have anything on fowl, and we've recently received I don't want to say a complaint, but a concern from one of the citizens due to an enormous amount of chickens on a property in a residential zone. Now, I definitely want to say that, you know, I don't want to not have chickens in residential zones, but I do think that we need to discuss, and the motion is just to discuss, the restrictions that we may have for fowl in residential zones. And so I asked the solicitor to, we kind of looked at the animal ordinance, and I looked at some other ordinances that would restrict fowl. And so I just wanted to talk to the council, and then I'll have the public speak on that. Presently, we don't have any limit on how many chickens, peacocks you can have in residential zones. So you could have 2, you could have 50, and that would be able to exist today in a residential zone in Narragansett. We don't have any rules around, you know, if they have to be cooped or contained, or how far apart you have to be from your neighbor. There's some issues around roosters, if you want a rooster, if you don't want a rooster in a residential zone, as far as the noise. And so it just, I think you probably all got an email on it, and I just wanted to know if you wanted to have a discussion and what you thought, and then we could hear from the public, because I know we don't have anything on record on the ordinances.
So the email we got was really on the rooster, on the noise of the rooster.
Yeah.
So today, among the many things I did a lot of reading about roosters and hens, and do you have to have a rooster for the eggs? I mean, never thought I'd be doing this, but the answer to that is you don't need the rooster unless you're going to have chicks.
Right.
So Susan, who loves the hens and the eggs, and people want to have fresh eggs, we can have them without the rooster. And that, I think that was the objection. The email was about young child being woken up early in the morning. So you know, roosters get up every morning. That's what their job is. Good roosters, right, Pat? They get up and they do their job.
Yes, I'm
But they also,
pro-rooster,
you're
for the record.
But they also can do it during the day, make noise. So we're talking about noise. So if really what we want to do is have people have the right to have fresh eggs, that's great. But we don't need to have the roosters. Interesting, this issue came up in South Kingstown a few years back as well. And they ended up ruling in a different way. They ended up saying that it would be okay for roosters because they are qualified as a rural community. They have many properties that are acreage or farmland. We don't have that. Metuxet, last time I looked, is what, 5,000 square foot lots, and it's not really a farming community. So if these folks want to be able, and I know Susan, you brought up some good points about as far as what it looks like, the odor, the other things that are involved in the pen, how close. I mean, those are things we have to look for. But outright, after what I reviewed today, if we don't need to have the rooster for the eggs, I think that maybe we don't need to have the rooster.
And Jill, we talked about, you know, how many. I mean, 25 is a lot, you know, is 6, 10, 25. I mean, I think that's the other thing, the amount of fowl you're going to have. Any other comments from the council as far as the ordinance? I mean, I was going to ask the solicitor to draft something.
Well, there goes my 2018 campaign. I've got a chicken in every pot, so I guess that's out. I'm actually pro-rooster, for the record.
Do we have a noise ordinance for other animals? I'm just curious.
We have an animal ordinance.
No, but is there a noise ordinance attached to the animal ordinance?
No, it's,
One of Ann sent us something from Providence,
no,
and there was a decibel ordinance attached to that, yes.
but we don't have
We
that.
currently do not.
Yeah.
So the dog can bark at 6 a.m. and go crazy, and what do we do if that's my neighbor has a dog that goes crazy at 6? I'm just curious.
You know, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's another
Yeah,
part of the
and I
ordinance.
guess that's my point why I said that we know roosters every single morning at 4:30 or whatever. They do it every morning. You know, you might have an occasional dog do that. That's why I have cats. But I think it's just because that's their job to get up and do it every single morning.
So we ban the rooster, is that kind of the concept? Is that where we're going?
Well-
The ordinance to ban the rooster?
I'm pro-rooster, but, yeah.
I don't know. It's a
Okay.
discussion.
All
I
right.
think it's a discussion since we have no restrictions at all. I was going to ask the solicitor this question. If we were to come up with a list of criteria for some kind of restrictions, what would happen to the person that presently exists in a house that has 32 chickens and a rooster in the residential zone in the north end of Narragansett, right, you know, in Metuxet? What would we do with that person?
If the ordinance were,
It's a non-contributory rooster.
if the ordinance were to pass, the town council would have to set a deadline for people to come into compliance. And you'd have to determine what would be reasonable under those circumstances. So whether it be 60 days or 90 days or 180 days, it'd be up to the council, but you would have to give somebody time to get into compliance.
Like give them through Easter so they could, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I don't know what the restrictions are going to be. I mean, we looked at a lot, and actually Nicole that's here, she did a lot of research. There's a lot. I mean, you can have 2 to 18 chickens. I mean, there are different ordinances in different places, and I guess I was asking the council, is there a will to have some kind of restriction, if we could agree on what those restrictions would be?
Yeah, and I guess I saw Tony here earlier. I'm wondering if we've ever had this come up before.
He's here for this ordinance because he did want to speak, and I don't know if he
He had to
left,
go.
but actually,
Yeah, he had to
if you
go.
guys don't mind, could we have Nicole come up?
Oh, chicken lady.
She's a neighbor that complained.
State your name and address, and I don't know if you could find Tony, because he was here for this. He left.
I think you left.
He had to
Nicole
go.
McCoy, 93 Old Pine Road.
Nicole, nice to have you here.
Thank you,
I
and
think-
thank you. I know it seems like a silly matter, but I thank you for taking the time to review it and to take it into consideration. We found ourselves in a very unique situation that I think is new for Narragansett, and that is that our property, which is in Metatuxet, so you are dealing with about 5,000 square foot or less lots, abuts another property very closely, less than 20 feet, that has acquired 22 chickens and 2 roosters. And while you would think that their job is to get up in the morning, crow once, wake you up and be done for the day, they wake up at 4:30 in the morning and they crow all day long until 10 p.m.
That's because there's 2 of them.
Yes, so they get to take turns.
That's
Yes.
because there's 2 of them.
They give each other a break. So, for example, today I was home with our 6-month-old daughter all day, and it began at 6:30 a.m. and crowed 12 times until 12:30 p.m. So our daughters currently have fans going, they have music playing in order to get them to sleep through the night, to not be up at 4:30 in the morning, and to be able to nap during the day. So it's really just become a quality of life issue for us. I am not against individuals having chickens in the town. I will put that out there. I'm not the chicken lady that wants to ban chickens completely. I have done quite a bit of research, and I understand why a lot of families have acquired what they call backyard flocks. But there are some concerns with individuals not maintaining adequate coops, if they're not in sanitary conditions, and if they're not giving adequate space between other residential properties. It can create quite an issue for predators. The chicken feed that's put out can acquire rats, snakes, as well as foxes and coyotes that seek out the chicken and their eggs. So when you have young children and you have also animals yourself, you take that into consideration as well. But our main concern right now would be the 2 roosters and the noise and nuisance, and that there's really no ordinance in place right now that falls under, that we can kind of place them in.
So
I just had a quick question.
Thank you, Nicole. Go ahead.
No, for Nicole. Nicole, where'd you live before? Did you live in the city?
We lived in Charlestown, very
Charleston.
rural area of
Right.
Charlestown.
And there were no
There were no roosters,
Right.
and we sought out Narragansett for kind of that peaceful seaside community. So this
Right.
kind of changed things up in the last year.
So 2 things. One is maybe based on density, there's some restrictions on certain type of,
Right.
fowl. And then the second thing, in terms of the short term, would be some public nuisance issue, right? I mean, it's become, I mean, if my neighbors are up past 11:30 yelling and screaming from their roof, drinking, Bud Light, I can call the police and have a.
So,
there's a noise ordinance, right?
Yes.
So
Tony came for the space, the how far away, and he was in favor of whatever we decide, and I told him we were going to maybe ask the solicitor to come up with some criteria, and then maybe we can,
Yeah, I
Tony
think
could
it's short term
speak
and
up.
a long term.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't overcomplicate it. I mean, I think it's with the rooster, then it's
I'm
the
not
roo-
hearing that
Yeah.
Well,
we have
the
to.
rooster, the rooster, he just doesn't, keep the hens in line, and I don't want to offend anybody on that one.
Well, no, I'm suggesting, I'm suggesting that you have none
Hashtag
of
me
these,
too.
you describe, what did you say that term was? Like backyard, what was
They're
that?
called backyard flocks.
Yeah, so, I mean, a 5,000 square foot lot probably shouldn't have a backyard flock, right? I'm kind of
Is that property, 5,000
anti-backyard
square feet?
flocks, like in 5,000
I
square
am
feet. That's
Right, but the
not
bigger issue is the
sure.
noise right now.
The noise.
Well, that's why I suggest the public nuisance, maybe there's something you can do there.
Well, generally, it's
That's
my
your blight
understanding.
issue that you've been trying, right, as well, because I actually parked in front of her house just to see if I could hear the rooster, which I did, but it is not very attractive in the back of your yard either, and that's, Mike, something that you have been trying to address as well.
Thank you, Nicole. We're going to, obviously, there's a desire to come up with some kind of restrictions, whether it's roosters, the land, whether it's the amount, the flock. So it appears that this council will look at an ordinance that will support restricting the backyard flocks in residential
But
zones.
see, I don't agree with that. I think it's the rooster is the problem. That's what I'd like to instruct
Well,
him on. We're
there's
not
two-
hearing about the other, but we're not getting a lot of problems on the other fronts about there's
So
backyard
we'll-
flocks all across town.
Well,
So,
I'm going to draft we'll
Right.
draft an ordinance.
right,
and
but
we'll
we
go
need to
through-
give instruction, right?
Right.
And we're kind of all over the place. Like,
Well, no, we're not. We're listening to
I mean,
that.
I
We
actually
said-
want to do what solve the problem, so.
We said that we are all in agreement that we want to put some restrictions, and I think if the solicitor comes back with some of the restrictions, we can go through them and vet them out. And if it's a limitation on
Yeah.
fowl, how many in a backyard?
But the noise is coming from one, I mean, it's a pretty simple solution. We don't need to get into a million
Well,
ordinances.
no,
It's one.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
it's just the rooster. That's the primary, right?
I
That's
think the primary issue are the two roosters and the noise that they create.
That's the primary
The
issue.
secondary issue would be a lot of families in Narragansett have acquired chickens, and that's a great thing. But at what point is it too many?
Right, the
Most
amount,
of our
the
towns
overabundance.
in Rhode Island put a limit on 8.
Yeah.
There's a maximum of 8.
Yeah.
So if it's 22 right now, are they allowed to continue?
But if we
hatching?
limit it to 8 but don't get rid of the roosters, we're not really solving your problem.
Well, I think.
That's my point.
My point is
I like
that
to
we
solve
can-
the problem, and I think
Right.
we are not giving a clear
Matt,
direction.
that's not true. We'll give a number of restrictions, and it can be
But why?
no roosters, because because it's a problem to have a backyard flock in a residential zone. So why we're going to add restrictions to the motion, we should address the issues, not just the noise. The 22 chickens that are at a 500-square-foot lot is also an issue. So don't Band-Aid it and just get rid of the roosters. Let's look at making it so future generations don't have 22 chickens in their backyard going from property to property. So I put the motion on based on what you said, the research that you did. I think if we direct the solicitor to look at the restrictions around, come back with them, we'll see what the appetite of this council is. Who likes roosters? Who doesn't want roosters? Do they want to do limitations? Do they not? But I don't want to just look at the rooster, because what I'm hearing is in the residential zones, some people have 8, 10, 15 chickens. That is a backyard flock that is disruptive to the quality of life in Narragansett. I want to raise chicken, let people have eggs too, but we have to address the problems. So I see that as a few different issues, and you brought a lot of research to it, so I think it sounds like this council wants to do some restrictions, and we'll narrow them down.
Right.
All right? Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Well, for the record, right?
Anybody else
I just want
about
to say.
restrictions on the animal
I
ordinance?
just want to say that if we restricted to one rooster, I think this situation would clear up fast. The reason is there's two roosters.
Okay,
And that's
so-
why they're squawking at each other.
So we can
You
add.
get rid of the rooster.
Oh, now you want to get rid of the roosters?
Have one rooster per
Because
barnyard.
earlier you were pro roosters, so we're going to have a list, and then we'll.
No, I don't want two roosters.
Okay.
I restrict it to one rooster. And then what Mark drew up is pretty, I mean, you got 6 chickens that are laying, that's a lot of eggs, you know? Even though you can get 10 medical marijuana plants with a card, but we're gonna restrict 6 chickens, but, okay.
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to speak as a person who was brought up on a chicken farm.
Oh, God, finally, an expert.
I was, well, you know, what can you say?
Yeah.
You gotta have some expertise in life. And the motion talks about keeping fowls, yet we're talking about roosters. And if the problem
Somebody
is the
speaking?
rooster, make it, but the premise here is only talking about fowls. And if you're gonna talk about fowls and roosters, you would much better use the word chickens. And if there are some, you know, this may be the Me Too movement going too far.
There you go, that's right, getting rid of the rooster, that's what I say.
But
Thank you,
please
Richard.
use the word chickens.
Right.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? It's just for discussion. So do we have, Karen?
We should talk about chickens every meeting. It's fun.
When we moved to Narragansett 30 years ago, there was a rooster or roosters at Canachet Farms, and they would always be crowing in the morning. Now, we could hear them maybe we're about 4 blocks from Canachet Farm. Right. My concern as a nurse would be, like there's this disease, toxoplasmosis, which runs with cat feces, and right. Sometimes cats run around. And a lot of the lots, like we live on a very small ranch house. I certainly don't want free-flying chickens and roosters next door. I mean, it's one thing if you're out in a farming community and you have a very large farm, but I'd be concerned about chickens and feces and the coyotes. There are coyotes around, and they're protected class, and there are hawks around. But I'm just, I put people over animals. And I think if you're opening the door, then people are going to stop wanting to grow their own eggs. It's just, now there are probably animal lovers that consider you being a sexist. I can just see an anti-rooster lawsuit that you're favoring the females rather than the male roosters.
I'm ready for therapy, okay? I'm ready for therapy over this.
Or polygamy rooster communities, I don't know, but
one rooster,
I'm just for the health of the community.
Thank you. Okay, it's just a motion to discuss. It seems like the council has an appetite to see a draft.
Can't wait till the next meeting.
And we'll see a draft on an ordinance for fowl and restrictions, and you can pass it by the building inspector as well. And anybody that has major concerns, they can email Mark and add it to the ordinance, okay?
I just want to say one more thing about the roosters. They also defend the hens from predators. When a fisher cat or something comes in, they'll fight. They'll fight to the death to protect those hens, for the record.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your story. Thanks. All right, we're going to move on the agenda. We still have number 9. I'll pull 11. We'll get to it. Number 9. A motion to authorize the town manager to sign a text amendment to the Fort Greene subdivision conservation easement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Donald?
Do you need me to say something?
Excuse me, we're running a meeting, so we need it quiet in the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a request that the town manager be authorized to sign an approval of an amendment to a conservation easement, which has been approved by the Homeowners Association. This subdivision was created in 1994. At the time it was created, a conservation easement was put on a portion of the property going down to the water. Same conservation easement was imposed by CRMC. In the 90s, CRMC did not have provisions for view corridors or access pathways. Over the years, their regulations have been modified and amended, and now they have a provision where a property owner can maintain a view corridor, a 25% percentage of their waterfront, so that they can actually have a view of the water and not be blocked over the years by the vegetation. And they also have a provision at CRMC that you can have a 6-foot wide access path down to the shore if you've got a waterfront property. So we've gone to CRMC and requested that they modify their assent, and they indicated that we would need the town to approve the Homeowners Association amendment to the conservation easement to allow the conservation easement to be so modified. So we're asking that the town just allow CRMC approved modifications to an existing subdivision plan. Planning board has reviewed them and approved it.
Any questions from the council on Fort Greene?
The only question I have is, Mike, the planning board had in November for the visibility, and then coming back now asking for the 6-foot path. Why weren't they asked at the same time?
Quite frankly, we overlooked the path would be in the same corridor as the view corridor, and it was our error that we did not request both at the same time.
Any other questions from the council?
With that view corridor, okay, I'm assuming, I'm looking at the map here. Is the map, is that something we can bring up? All right. What I'm looking at here. So how many lots are there? I didn't get a chance to look at this one.
Do you have the map, John? There's 9 waterfront lots. One of them already has a prior approved access way and corridor that was
Right.
approved by the council a number
All
of
right, I
years
see
ago.
it. All right, so okay, so that's access, and then what's the width?
6-foot wide access path. The width of the view corridor varies for each lot because it's a function of how much waterfront
Right.
coastal feature you
Right,
have.
it diminishes with the linear footage of the frontage.
Yes.
All right. Do the lots on the back have any access? Is there a common access for that neighborhood?
Yes, there are 2 common accesses for the
Okay.
lots in the back.
All right, good. All right, yeah, all right, that's the only question I had. Just want to make sure that, okay, good.
Mike, is everybody all set with? Matt? Thanks, Don. Anybody from the public?
I think you're out of the zoning district.
All those in favor of the motion number 9?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Congratulations. We're going to pull motion 11 because Mr. Moretti would like to hold on that.
Come back next week, we're going to talk about geese. You can come back next week.
Motion 12, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 46, the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Miscellaneous Offenses, and this is on by the chief.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 13, a motion to approve the purchase of one new 2018 35 Chevrolet Express commercial cutaway van with a cube body and a lift from National Auto Fleet Group utilizing the National Joint Powers Alliance contract in the amount of $38,346.19. Do I have a motion?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No, I just want to quickly commend, well, Mike's not here, I thought I saw Mike, the last snowstorm, a tremendous effort, especially in my area. They actually, whoever plowed my road actually stopped and asked me if they wanted me to put the snow someplace else because they saw me shuffling. So
Okay.
I just wanted to commend
Okay,
you.
motion 13 about the purchase of the,
Yeah, no, I just was putting the trucks in the snowstorm.
Stanley, come on up, thanks. At the end, we can say that, too.
I was looking at it, and this only had 186,000 miles on it, I think it's read. And I think I've tried many times to change our thinking on vehicles, especially commercial-type vehicles. They should be able to go 500,000 miles. When you're buying a truck, you buy a commercial-type truck. I got a pickup truck, it's got 208,000 miles, and it's going just fine. You know, it periodically needs some kind of maintenance, a starter, an alternator, whatever. Now, this one here, in the document, I think it says something like there's some rust involved. Well, I had a fellow that used to pressure wash the vehicle underneath every year to make sure you get all the salt out so we can reduce the amount of rust we have. And just because we have the money allocated in our capital budget, I would like to try and extend these vehicles closer to at least at 250,000 miles before we give up on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All those,
Madam President?
Yeah, I
Yes.
just want to defend the Department of Public Works. They do pressure wash their vehicles. They always get the salt off them. Every time they go plowing, they come back and they power. That's why everybody thinks they're driving around in new trucks. It's just that they take you know, and they do a lot of their own welding and stuff, so.
Thank you,
they do a
Patrick.
good job.
Did you want to say something, Jim?
Yes. This vehicle's a 2001 Dodge. That was a hand-me-down. It's a two-wheel drive, has 158,000 miles on it. But I think most shockingly, the town has spent, since 2001, from 2010 until now, $22,745 to maintain this vehicle, even though it's only worth about $550. So while I would agree that most vehicles can get 300,000, 400,000 miles, and my truck, I did the same thing, Stanley, that's not the only measure. These vehicles are hard-use vehicles. They're used in all inclement weather, salt all over them. They maintain them as best they can. But sometimes this vehicle, we get 15 years out of it. We got our money's worth out of this one. It's too expensive to maintain. There's another, the reason these vehicles are so expensive, and it comes up a lot, is because there's a new piece of equipment we add to the back of them. It's a lift. And it'll prevent very serious back injuries to the employees, which predominantly employees who go out on IOD go out with these back injuries from lifting heavy drums and equipment. So these vehicles are all coming forward with these new lifts. I hear you. I keep an eye on these vehicles, but we really need this vehicle. This vehicle's done.
Yeah, Jim, we don't have too many lift trucks either, right? We got like 2 others, I think?
I don't know the exact amount, but as we replace each
And none that are covered.
None that are covered. That's correct. But I can honestly say this vehicle is done. Its useful life is over.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 14, a motion to approve the security upgrades at the Scarborough wastewater treatment facilities by Galaxy Integrated Technologies, Inc., in the amount of $36,322.22. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Number 15, a motion to approve the rebuilding and upgrading of the wastewater commuter for the Sprague Bridge Pump Station from JWC Environmental LLC and Aqua Solutions for the total amount of $31,315.76. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing no hands, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0, motion passes. 16, a motion to schedule a work session with NIAT to discuss and review the actual study of the town's pension plan and other post-employment benefits. This motion comes from Laura. Do I
So
have a second?
Second.
Discussion, and we have a date of February 5th at 6:30.
Man, the 5th again with the 5th?
Yeah, we have something else at 6,
Don't
but
we have,
6:30. We have a
sewer?
6, oh, I don't know, but sewer.
I think we got a sewer policy.
I know, but we have Nyhart from Laura at 6:30, so that's all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, motion passes. Number 17, a motion to approve the schedule for the budget process for the fiscal year 2018-19. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Anybody from the public? Seeing no hands, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, motion passes. 18, a motion to direct the town manager and the director of public works to give the town council and the residents of Narragansett an update on the road improvement bond that was approved, I forget what year it was, 2011? 12, on March 5th at the town council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Discussion. I
Yeah,
just
I
put
would-
this
oh,
on.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I just put it on because I wanted to make sure the council and the public, people ask about their infrastructure and their roads and the rating and when it's happening. And I just thought it would be good for the council and the public to know the plan, and I hope that it will be out there so everybody understands. Mike?
Yeah, no, I just was going to reiterate, this presentation, when it happens, should include all the phases, the schedule, the criteria, timetable, et cetera, et cetera.
Madam President? So this is long overdue. I agree with you. Many of the questions we get are on the infrastructure of the town. So I've directed, we're doing our research on it, directed Mike DeChico, Director of DPW, to explain, to give a historical perspective of this bond, how much is left, how much we spent, how much is left, where the phases are, with each road in town, 110 miles of roads, on where everyone stands. Not that we're going to change, we can change, because everyone wants the road done, but at least people know where they stand. I also directed him to contact CRMC, which is, quite honestly, is holding up some of these roads because of, some of the studies they have to do and planning. There are 35 roads, from what I've been told, in CRMC right now, where when I asked when could we get the plan, I was told a month to 18 months. Well, that's unacceptable. So we'll have some answers for you on that date.
Thank you. We're looking forward to that. Anybody from the public? Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 19, a motion to direct the town manager and staff to do a comprehensive analysis of the following facilities: Kinney Bungalow, North Beach Clubhouse, and the towers. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion. I put this on, I know some of the council people have indicated they wanted more information, and I wanted it put out publicly so that the council and the residents understand the analysis and the reason behind the analysis. And Jim, I don't know if you want to add anything to the study.
Yes, so I have been directed, well, with your permission, I will be directed to do a complete analysis of this. I don't think anyone should read into this right now. I think it's just everyone needs to know what's making money, what's losing money, and where's the money going with each of these venues, and how can we improve the profitability of each one of them. That's really all this is.
Running the town like a business.
And we get, and this is going to echo what we get at budget. I mean, except for North Beach Clubhouse, this information is available during our budget workshop.
That's correct.
I mean, we have it for the Land Trust and Kinney Bungalow and the towers, so it's mostly going to echo information that we've already heard. So
That's correct. I was briefed on some of these venues today, and you're right, that same information is going to come before you.
Thank you, Jim. Stanley? Oh, Stanley, and then, sorry. And then you next, Richard, go ahead.
He's a frequent flyer.
I didn't see you in the back.
I just want to commend the town manager for doing that. I'm very interested, of course, in the budget. Some of these facilities, I guess, are so-called losing money, and I'd like to see some kind of plan, long-term plan on how we're going to stop losing money, or how do we make more money, and I want to target these because I think we might have problems here. So I'm so happy he's targeting these, not only a budget section when you're full of so many things to do, you don't worry about these little things. So I'm happy it's a point of concern right now. Thank you.
Excellent.
Stanley, that's the council that came up with that idea, so
They come
you
up
should
with
be
that
thanking
idea.
them.
Well,
yes.
thank you very much for coming with that
Yeah,
idea.
it's just been on my mind.
I had a boy for the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So is it possible?
You have to say your name and your address.
Richard Zersha, 25 Marion Avenue.
Nice to see you, Richard.
Thank you. Is it possible to include the community center in what you're doing with that? Only because many people use the community center, but over the years, every once in a while we go through times when it doesn't seem to be too user-friendly.
I think that, mind if I answer? You
Yeah,
wanna answer?
it's not in the motion, so if you, go ahead.
These three venues that we're going to study are the ones that the town rents out, leases. There's profitability and losses on each one of these. The community center is exactly what it is. That's a totally separate issue, but I don't think that would be included with these three right here.
Well, I don't know if it could be because there's a fee charge to rent it and use it by people. I didn't know if there was a way to just look into the.
yeah, could we get the fees on it? I would be interested in that.
So Richard, it's a great point. I asked to put those on, but I'm open to if, you
we amend
want
it?
to
Why
take
don't
a
we
look at it. I
can
mean,
we
I think
amend it?
it's important, so I mean, it's
Why
not in
not?
the motion, but we certainly
amend
can
it,
take
right?
some
Can we amend the
information.
Do
Yeah.
you want to amend the motion?
I think
Just
over
add it
time-
to it, yeah.
Over time, the rules of how it is able to be used and who can use it and the fees and whatnot with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's been a long time and maybe just look into it and see if it's really serving the community the way we want it to.
Perfect, thank you.
Move to amend to include the community center.
Second.
Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor. Anybody else wishing to speak? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, so you can include that. Excellent.
I had a question for the, did we ever put that backflow preventer in that community center? Do you know?
It has not been put in yet.
Okay.
But it is,
They're working
will
on
be
it.
put
All
in.
right.
Okay, and the last motion, a motion to appoint or reappoint a tree warden for the town of Narragansett pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 214-2. Do I have
Move
a-
to reappoint Steve Danyo.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Congratulations, Steve. He's the tree warden.
And move to
It's-
appoint Joe Harvey.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Joe Harvey will be deputy.
Deputy. But
Deputy.
he's not on yet, that's why I
Right,
did separate
right,
motions.
But he will be deputy.
Okay.
Right, yeah, he's, Steve is a reappointment and Joe's new.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0, motion passes. Good night, and I'm.
Count your chickens.